What happens when a beloved actor known for his deep faith walks onto the set of a morning show hosted by one of TV's most provocative interviewers? Jonathan Roumie, celebrated for his powerful portrayal of Jesus in The Chosen, expected a straightforward chat on Good Morning America to promote his latest faith-based film. But what unfolded was a fiery clash that shocked viewers, rattled producers, and set social media ablaze. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a battle over beliefs, values, and the role of faith in public life that exposed raw tensions in real time. Subscribe and drop a comment, because this story ignites with every word and builds to a showdown you won't see coming. Jonathan Roumie stepped onto the Good Morning America set, greeted by a wave of applause from the audience, ready to discuss his new project, a film about redemption and hope. George Stephanopoulos, the host, welcomed him with a polished smile. But the conversation quickly took a sharp turn, diving into territory that caught Jonathan off guard and set the stage for a confrontation that would make headlines. "Thanks for being here, Jonathan. Big fan of your work," George began, his voice smooth but pointed. "Your role in The Chosen has inspired millions, but let's talk about this new film. It's all about faith, right? Do you think Hollywood's obsession with religious stories is getting a bit, well, preachy?" Jonathan leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "I wouldn't call it preachy, George. It's about telling stories that resonate with people's deepest hopes. Faith is universal. It's about love, redemption, things everyone connects with, not just a sermon." George raised an eyebrow, his voice taking on a skeptical edge. "Universal, really? Because some might say these films are just pandering to a specific crowd. You know, the Bible Belt, pushing a Christian agenda in a world that's moved past that." The audience shifted, sensing the tension, as Jonathan responded, his voice steady. "Moved past. I don't buy that, George. People are hungry for meaning, for something bigger than themselves. My films, The Chosen, they're not about pushing anything. They're about inviting people to think about what matters." George didn't let up, his tone sharp. "Inviting or converting? Because let's be honest, Jonathan, your projects lean heavily into Christianity. Some say it's exclusionary, alienating people who don't share your beliefs. Don't you think that's a problem in a diverse society?" Jonathan's voice grew firmer, his words deliberate. "Exclusionary, no. I'd say it's inclusive. Faith isn't about shutting people out. It's about opening doors. My work reflects stories of compassion, forgiveness, values that cross cultures. You don't have to be Christian to feel that." George smirked, leaning back. "Compassion, sure. But isn't it a bit naive to think ancient texts can solve modern problems? I mean, come on, we're in 2025. Science and reason have kind of taken the lead, haven't they?" The crowd murmured, some nodding, others visibly uncomfortable, as Jonathan countered. "Science and reason are vital, but they don't answer why we're here, why we love, why we sacrifice. Faith fills that gap, George. And dismissing it as outdated is dismissing half the world's heartbeat." The exchange heated up, George pressing harder. "Half the world, that's a stretch. Your fans love you, but let's not pretend everyone's on board with this Jesus narrative. Some call it propaganda, a way to push conservative values under the guise of entertainment." Jonathan's tone sharpened, his voice carrying conviction. "Propaganda. That's a cheap shot, George. My work isn't about politics, it's about human stories. The same stories that have inspired people for centuries. You're framing it like faith is a dirty word, but it's the opposite. It's hope." George chuckled, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Hope or fantasy? Because some would argue you're selling a fairy tale, Jonathan. A 2,000-year-old myth that doesn't hold up in a world of facts and data." The audience gasped, the room buzzing with unease. As Jonathan fired back, "A myth? That's what you think billions of people's beliefs are? George, you're sitting there mocking something sacred to so many, and you call that journalism. I call it arrogance." George waved a hand, his tone dismissive. "Arrogance, no. It's just asking questions, Jonathan. You're the one getting defensive. Maybe because deep down you know faith-based entertainment is a niche, not a movement. Jonathan's voice rose slightly, his words cutting. Niche. Tell that to the millions streaming The Chosen worldwide. Tell that to the people who find purpose in these stories. You're not asking questions. George, you're baiting me, trying to make faith sound irrelevant when it's the backbone of so many lives. The co-host, Robin Roberts, tried to interject. Maybe we can talk about the film's impact. But George cut her off, his voice firm. No, Robin. I want to hear this, Jonathan. You're saying faith is universal. But what about the people who feel judged by it, who see Christianity as a tool for division, not unity? Jonathan shook his head, his tone unwavering. Judgment. That's not what my work is about. It's about love, grace, second chances. If that feels divisive to you, maybe that's more about your lens than my message. The confrontation was now a full-on clash, the audience hanging on every word. As George pushed further, his voice laced with condescension. Love and grace, sure. But let's talk about the baggage. The church's history, the Crusades, the scandals. You're tying yourself to that, aren't you, by making these films? Jonathan's response was swift, his voice ringing with conviction. Baggage, every institution has it, George. But don't conflate human flaws with the message of faith. My films don't defend history. They tell stories of transformation. You're cherry-picking to make a point, and it's not landing. George leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Not landing, or you're dodging. Because it's convenient to ignore the harm religion's done when you're profiting from its stories, right? Jonathan's voice grew intense, his words sharp. Profiting, that's your angle. I pour my heart into these projects, George. I've turned down bigger paychecks to tell stories that matter. You're sitting there reducing faith to a cash grab. And that's not just wrong, it's insulting. The segment was teetering on the edge. Producers whispering frantically in the control room. As the audience sat in stunned silence, the air thick with the weight of a debate that had gone far beyond a promotional interview. George, sensing the intensity, doubled down, his voice mocking. Insulting maybe, but let's talk truth, Jonathan. Your faith might inspire some, but it alienates others. Don't you owe it to them to tone it down, make it less, well, in-your-face Christian? Jonathan's response was immediate, his voice steady but fiery. Tone it down, why? So I can make you comfortable, George. Faith isn't a trend you water down, it's a truth you live. And if that's too much for you, maybe that's your problem, not mine. The crowd erupted in scattered applause, some cheering Jonathan's conviction, others shocked by the raw intensity, as the stage was set for a showdown that would only grow more explosive. Jonathan Roumie and George Stephanopoulos stood locked in a verbal duel on the Good Morning America set, their words flying like arrows, each one sharper than the last as the audience held its breath, caught in the crossfire of a debate that had spiraled far beyond a simple interview. The air crackled with the intensity of their clash over faith, media, and authenticity, with no sign of either backing down. Producers scrambled behind the scenes, their headsets buzzing with urgent commands, as the segment teetered on the edge of chaos, threatening to become a defining moment for both men. Keep that subscribe button ready and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this showdown is about to hit a new level of fire, and you won't believe where it's headed next. George fired off. You talk about faith like it's the answer to everything. Jonathan, but isn't it true your films just push a Christian narrative that shuts out anyone who doesn't buy into your worldview? Jonathan shot back. Shuts out, no way, George. The Chosen speaks to people of all beliefs. It's about love and truth, not a gated community for Christians. Why do you keep framing it like faith is the enemy? George leaned in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Enemy? I'm just saying your truth isn't everyone's truth. You're selling a story that's divisive to half the country. Don't you think that's irresponsible in today's world? Jonathan's voice grew sharper. Irresponsible. What's irresponsible is dismissing billions of people's beliefs as irrelevant. My work invites dialogue, George, but you're the one shutting it down with snark. George scoffed. Snark, I'm asking tough questions, Jonathan. Something you seem allergic to. Maybe because your whole career's built on playing a saint, not answering for the baggage of religion. Jonathan countered. Baggage, sure, humans mess up. But my career's about showing the good in faith, the hope, not the mistakes. Why are you so obsessed with tearing that down? George pushed harder. Tearing down, no, I'm calling it like I see it. Your films glorify a belief system that's been used to justify wars, oppression, you name it. You can't just gloss over that with pretty stories. Jonathan's tone hardened. Gloss over, I don't. My work shows the raw human side of faith. The struggle, the redemption. You're reducing it to a caricature to score points. That's not journalism, that's a stunt. The audience clapped briefly, but George waved it off, his voice rising. A stunt. You're the one turning Jesus into a Hollywood brand. Jonathan, don't you think it's a bit hypocritical to profit off spirituality while claiming it's all about hope? Jonathan fired back. Profit, there it is. You think I'm in this for money, George. I've poured my own cash into The Chosen to keep it authentic. Turned down blockbuster roles to stay true to my calling. What have you sacrificed for truth lately? George's voice turned icy. Sacrifice, please. I've been in this game longer than you've been famous. I ask questions to get to the core, not to sell a feel-good fantasy like you do. Jonathan didn't flinch. Fantasy. That's what you call faith. Billions of people live by it. Find purpose in it, and you're sitting there mocking it like it's a fairy tale. That's not getting to the core. That's just being cruel. George leaned back, his tone mocking. Cruel? No, I'm being real, Jonathan. Your fans might eat up your Jesus act, but the rest of us see it for what it is. A niche product for a shrinking audience, not a universal truth. Jonathan's voice surged with conviction. Shrinking. Tell that to the millions streaming The Chosen in every country. George, faith isn't shrinking, it's growing. Because people want meaning, not cynicism. Why does that scare you so much? George snapped. Scare? Nothing scares me. I'm just not buying the idea that your show's some grand unifier. It's a Christian pitch, plain and simple. And it alienates anyone who values reason over blind belief. Jonathan countered. Blind belief, that's a lazy stereotype. My faith drives me to question, to seek, to love. My work reflects that. But you'd rather paint me as a zealot than engage with the actual message. Robin Roberts tried to jump in. Let's talk about the new film's themes. But George cut her off. No, Robin. This is important, Jonathan. You claim your work's inclusive. But what about the people who feel judged by Christianity, who see it as a tool for control, not love? Jonathan's voice was steady. Judged. That's not my message, George. My films show Jesus meeting people where they are. Sinners, doubters, everyone. If that feels like control to you, maybe you're projecting your own biases. George's tone grew sharper. Biases. I'm just saying your version of love comes with strings. You're asking people to buy into a belief system that's been divisive for centuries. Don't you owe it to them to admit that? Jonathan fired back. Owe it. I owe people honesty, and I give it. My work doesn't demand agreement. It invites reflection. You're the one demanding I dilute my faith to fit your narrative, and I won't do it. George pushed the attack, his voice laced with condescension. Reflection or indoctrination, because let's be real, Jonathan. Your films are sermons dressed up as entertainment. You're not fooling anyone with that humble actor bit. Jonathan's voice rose. Sermons, you're reaching, George. I'm an actor, not a preacher. My job is to tell stories that move people. And if those stories point to faith, that's because faith moves me. Why does that make you so defensive? George shot back. Defensive, I'm just calling out the elephant in the room. Your work's tied to a religion that's been used to exclude, to judge, to harm. You can't just wave that away with a smile. Jonathan's tone was fierce. Wave it away, I don't. I face it head on. My films show faith as a path to healing, not harm. You're the one ignoring that to push your anti-religion agenda, and it's transparent. The clash was now a full-blown firestorm. Producers signaling frantically to cut to commercial. But George pressed on. Anti-religion? No, I'm pro-truth. Jonathan, And the truth is, your faith might inspire some, but it's a turn-off for others. Don't you think you're alienating half your audience by leaning so hard into it? Jonathan's voice boomed. Alienate? I'm not here to please everyone, George. I'm here to tell stories that matter to me. Stories that lift people up, if that's too much for you. Maybe you're the one who's alienated from meaning. The audience cheered loudly, some standing, as George's voice cracked. Meaning. You think you've got a monopoly on that, Jonathan. Faith isn't the only path. And acting like it just proves my point. Jonathan leaned in, his words cutting. Monopoly, no, but it's my path. And I won't apologize for it. You invited me here to talk about my work, but all you've done is mock my beliefs. That's not an interview, that's a hit job. Jonathan Roumie's voice still rang in the air of the Good Morning America set, his unyielding defense of faith clashing with George Stephanopoulos' biting skepticism, as the segment hurtled toward a breaking point that no one saw coming. Producers hovered on the edge of panic, their urgent whispers drowned out by the raw intensity of the confrontation, a battle over belief and authenticity that had transformed a routine interview into a cultural firestorm. The audience sat riveted, caught in the crosshairs of a debate that was no longer about a film, but about the soul of public discourse. Subscribe and share your thoughts below, because this explosive finale will reveal who emerges with their principles intact and who's left reeling from the fallout. George pressed forward, his voice sharp. You keep dodging, Jonathan. You claim your films are about love, but they're steeped in a faith that's been divisive for centuries. Don't you owe it to your audience to admit Christianity's flaws? Jonathan fired back. Owe it? I've never hidden the flaws, George. My work shows the human side of faith, the struggles, the doubts. But you're not interested in that. You just want to paint me as a fanatic to make headlines. George scoffed. Headlines, no. I'm after truth. Your truth seems to come with a cross and a sermon, and that's not universal. It's exclusive. Admit it. Jonathan's voice surged. Exclusive. That's your spin. My films invite everyone. Doubters, believers, anyone seeking meaning. You're the one excluding people by mocking what's sacred to them. George leaned in, his tone dripping with condescension. Sacred? Come on, Jonathan. We're in a world of science, reason. Your sacred stories are just relics to most people. Aren't you pushing a fantasy that's out of touch? Jonathan countered. Out of touch. Tell that to the millions who find hope in the chosen. Faith isn't a relic. It's a living truth. You call it fantasy because it doesn't fit your narrative. But that's your blind spot, not mine. George's voice rose. Blind spot. I'm calling it like I see it. Your show's a Christian sales pitch. And you're banking on it while pretending it's for everyone. That's the real hypocrisy. Jonathan's words cut sharp. Hypocrisy. You're accusing me of selling faith while you sell cynicism every morning. George, I've poured my heart into projects that lift people up. What are you building with your platform division? The audience erupted in applause, a wave of support for Jonathan, as George snapped. Division. I'm asking questions people want answered, like why you think your faith gets a free pass when it's been used to justify hate for centuries. Jonathan's voice boomed. Hate. That's not my message. My work shows love, forgiveness, redemption. You keep dragging up history to dodge the present. My films challenge hate, but you're too busy mocking to notice. George shot back. Mocking? I'm holding you accountable, Jonathan. You can't just wave a Bible and call it art. You're pushing an agenda, and it's alienating anyone who values logic over dogma. Jonathan leaned forward. Alienating? No, you're the one alienating people, George. By reducing faith to a punchline. My art speaks to the heart. Your questions just tear it apart. Robin Roberts tried again. Maybe we can discuss the film's impact on fans. But George cut her off. No, Robin. This matters, Jonathan. You say your work's inclusive. But what about the people who feel judged by Christianity? Don't you owe them an apology for leaning so hard into it? Jonathan's voice was fierce. Apology? For what? Being true to my beliefs. My films show Jesus loving the outcast, the skeptic, everyone. If that feels like judgment, that's on you, not me. George's tone turned icy. On me, nice dodge, but your fans aren't skeptics. They're believers buying what you're selling. You're not bridging divides, you're preaching to the choir. Jonathan fired back. Preaching, wrong. I'm telling stories that challenge people to think, to feel, to question. You're the one shutting down dialogue by labeling faith as dogma. George pushed harder. Dialogue, this is dialogue, Jonathan, but you're not answering. You're deflecting. Your films glorify a religion that's been a source of division, and you act like it's all love and light. Jonathan's voice was unwavering. Division, you keep saying that, but my work unites people across cultures, faiths, backgrounds. You're the one dividing by attacking what billions hold dear. That's not truth-seeking. That's bullying. George's voice cracked. Bullying? You're calling me a bully for asking questions. I'm doing my job, Jonathan. Maybe you can't handle the heat of real scrutiny. Jonathan's words sliced through. Scrutiny? This isn't scrutiny, George. It's a hit job. You invited me to talk about my film, but you've spent the whole time mocking my faith. That's not journalism. It's a vendetta. The clash reached a fever pitch, George's voice rising. Vendetta? No. I'm exposing the truth. Your faith might work for you, but it's not the answer for everyone. And acting like it is just proves you're out of touch. Jonathan stood up, his voice commanding. Out of touch. I'm in touch with what moves people. George, faith, hope, love. These aren't problems. They're solutions. And if you can't see that, you're the one missing the point. George shouted. Missing the point? You're the one dodging reality. Your films are a Christian fantasy, and you're selling it to a world that's moved on. Stick to acting, Jonathan, and leave the big questions to us. Jonathan's voice was steady. Big questions, you're not asking them, George. You're mocking them. And I won't sit here while you tear down what I stand for. I'm done with your circus. George's voice trembled. Done, you're running away. Jonathan, that's real brave, walking off when the questions get tough. Jonathan turned to the audience, his words resolute. Running? No. I'm choosing to walk away from a fight you started. George, you want to mock faith, fine. But I'm here to build, not destroy, and I won't let you drag me into your game. George snapped. My game. This is my show, Jonathan, and I decide what gets said. So if you can't handle it, get out. Jonathan's voice was calm but piercing. Get out, fine, I'll leave. But not because you're kicking me off. Because I respect myself too much to stay in a place where faith is treated like a joke. He walked toward the exit, pausing to address the audience. You deserve better than this. You deserve conversations that lift you up, not tear you down. Remember who tried to do that today. George shouted after him. Go ahead, leave, but you're proving my point. You can't handle real talk. Jonathan didn't turn back, his final words echoing. Real talk, George, starts with respect, something you forgot the moment I sat down. The cameras followed Jonathan's exit. George left standing, his voice faltering. We'll be right back after this break. The producers cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Social media exploded with clips of the clash. Trending hashtags praising Jonathan's conviction and slamming George's mockery, with posts declaring, Jonathan Roumie just schooled George Stephanopoulos on faith. News outlets called it a historic meltdown, noting how Jonathan's defensive belief resonated while George's attacks fell flat. Jonathan stayed silent post-show, letting his exit speak, while George's team issued a weak statement about spirited debate. But the public had decided. Jonathan walked away with his integrity, George with a tarnished reputation. The moment became a cultural touchstone, a reminder that faith, when defended with grace, could outshine even the sharpest cynicism, leaving a legacy that would echo every time the clash was replayed.
Thank you for watching our channel Modern Stories. If you liked our video, you should subscribe for more amazing videos like this. Have a healthy and happy day. See you in the next one.